Would you ever choose to live this way if you had more money than you could spend in 100 lifetimes? No pressure, no limits, no one telling you what to do. Because that's exactly the question people asked when they discovered how this billionaire actually lived, and the answer he gave quietly confused almost everyone who heard it. Most people imagine billionaires surrounded by excess, constant indulgence, and unlimited comfort. But when people got close enough to see his daily choices, they realized something felt off, not wrong, but deeply intentional in a way that didn't match the fantasy. He could afford anything, yet he consistently chose less, and not in a performative way, but in ways that made people uncomfortable because they couldn't immediately explain them. He lived in a house that looked ordinary from the outside, drove a car that didn't signal status, and kept a routine that felt almost invisible. When asked why, he never gave a motivational answer. He simply said that comfort is expensive, not because it costs money, but because it costs awareness. And once you lose awareness, you lose control. What confused people most was that these choices weren't about discipline or humility. They were strategic. He believed that the moment your lifestyle becomes louder than your thinking, you start making decisions to maintain appearances rather than outcomes. He had watched too many wealthy people become trapped by the very success that was supposed to free them. There was one habit in particular that shocked people when they learned about it. Every week, without exception, he would deliberately put himself in situations where money gave him no advantage at all. No special treatment, no shortcuts, no access. He wanted to feel friction. He wanted to be reminded what it was like to operate without leverage, because comfort dulls perception, and dull perception leads to fragile decisions. People around him didn't understand this at first. They assumed it was some philosophical exercise. But over time, they noticed something strange. While others reacted emotionally to market swings, public opinion, or sudden changes, he remained calm. His decisions were grounded, measured, and rarely impulsive. That friction he sought acted like resistance training for his judgment. Another choice he made that confused even his closest circle was his relationship with information. Despite having access to the best advisors, analysts, and data, he limited what he consumed daily. He believed that constant input created artificial urgency, and urgency was the enemy of clear thinking. While others chased updates, he protected silence. He also avoided one thing almost every wealthy person around him embraced: constant validation. He rarely attended events designed to celebrate him. He avoided interviews unless there was a clear purpose. He didn't seek admiration because admiration subtly shifts your priorities. Once you start optimizing for applause, you stop optimizing for truth. What made his lifestyle so difficult to copy wasn't the simplicity. It was the restraint. Most people think wealth allows unlimited choice, but he believed real freedom came from removing options that weaken focus. He intentionally narrowed his world, not because it was small, but because it was precise. This approach showed up in how he handled decisions. While others gathered endless opinions, he asked fewer questions, but deeper ones. He didn't ask what was impressive or exciting. He asked what was necessary. He wasn't interested in appearing busy. He was interested in remaining unpressured. People who worked closely with him noticed that he never rushed. Even when stakes were high, his pace remained steady. That wasn't confidence. It was design. He structured his life so that nothing forced urgency. No debt, no public promises, no lifestyle obligations. This gave him an unfair advantage that few people ever recognized. One of the most surprising things he admitted privately was that he didn't enjoy spending money as much as people assumed. Not because he lacked taste, but because spending often created new dependencies. The more you own, the more you maintain. The more you maintain, the more attention you lose. He saw attention as his most valuable asset, and he guarded it relentlessly. To outsiders, his life looked restrained. To him, it felt expansive. He could think clearly, move deliberately, and walk away without consequence. That ability, more than any luxury, was what made him feel truly wealthy. And when someone finally asked him the question everyone was thinking, whether he would live differently if he were starting over, he paused, then said something that stayed with everyone who heard it. He said that if he lost everything tomorrow, he would rebuild faster than most people expect, not because of what he knows, but because of how he lives. His habits weren't dependent on wealth, they were what created it. And that answer forced people to confront a difficult idea. That wealth isn't just about what you accumulate, but about what you refuse to let into your life, even when you can afford it. What most people didn't realize was that his way of living wasn't designed to impress anyone. It was designed to protect something far more fragile than money. Over time, those close to him understood that every unusual choice he made was about preserving clarity. He believed confusion was the most expensive mistake a person could make, because confused people react instead of decide. One of the principles he lived by was intentionally removing pressure from his future self. He structured his life so that very few decisions were urgent. No lifestyle that required constant income. No public expectations he had to live up to. No habits that demanded emotional maintenance. This wasn't minimalism for aesthetic reasons. It was strategic reduction. He often said that people underestimate how much energy it takes to manage a complicated life. Meetings, properties, appearances, commitments, all of it pulls attention away from thinking. He believed thinking was the real work, and everything else was support. The moment thinking becomes secondary, mistakes become inevitable. Another detail that surprised people was how he handled mistakes. When something went wrong, he didn't rush to fix it publicly. He paused. He observed. He allowed consequences to unfold enough to understand their shape before acting. This restraint prevented him from making emotional corrections that solved nothing but created new problems. He also believed that most people fail not because they lack opportunity, but because they fill their lives with obligations that slowly eliminate flexibility. Wealth, in his view, was about optionality. The ability to say no without consequences. The ability to wait. The ability to walk away. Everything he owned, he evaluated through the lens. This mindset extended to relationships as well. He kept a small circle, not out of distrust, but out of alignment. He valued honesty over loyalty and depth over familiarity. He wasn't interested in being surrounded. He wanted to be understood. That kind of connection, he believed, was rare and required intention. As time passed, people began to see that his choices weren't sacrifices, they were investments in a different currency. Peace.focus.com. He understood that once those are gone, no amount of money can fully buy them back. This realization shaped every decision he made, even when it confused others. What made his lifestyle so powerful was that it scaled downward as well as upward. If his wealth disappeared, his structure remained. He didn't rely on money to create order. Order came first. Money followed. This is why his confidence never wavered. It wasn't tied to numbers, but to systems. People who spent time with him often left with a strange feeling. Not inspiration, but clarity. They started questioning their own lives, not because he told them what to change, but because his existence exposed how much unnecessary noise they had accepted as normal. The question, would you do this if you were a billionaire, slowly transformed into a deeper one? Would you be willing to live this way now, without the money? Would you still choose simplicity if no one praised it? Would you still protect your time if it meant disappointing people? That was the uncomfortable truth his life revealed. His habits weren't impressive because of his wealth. His wealth existed because of his habits. Most people wait for success to justify change. He changed first, then allowed success to follow. In the end, the most surprising thing wasn't how little he indulged, but how much freedom he had. Freedom to think clearly, freedom to decide slowly, freedom to remain unaffected by pressure. That kind of freedom, he believed, was the real definition of wealth. And while most people will never have his level of money, the principles behind his choices remain available to anyone willing to question the default path. Not everyone will choose it, Not everyone can tolerate the discomfort of restraint, but for those who can, the reward isn't just financial, it's foundational. Because the truth is, wealth doesn't change who you are. It amplifies how you live. And if your life is built on urgency, validation, and excess, money only makes those things louder. But if your life is built on clarity, intention, and control, money simply removes friction. So the real question isn't whether you would live like him if you were a billionaire. The real question is whether you're willing to live with that level of intention. Before you ever get there,